Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming today. I'm Lucy Birmingham, the president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. Before I introduce our very influential speaker, I just quickly want to let you know that this is part of our series on women called Women Speak. Besides sports, topics will include women in science and technology, women in law, and lots more. So please do join those. Today we're very honored to have Debbie Jevans, the woman in charge of organizing next year's Rugby World Cup in England. So she's the CEO of England Rugby 2015. Her visit here with the Webb Ellis Cup couldn't be better timing. Yesterday, as all of you probably know, Japan beat Hong Kong to represent Asia at the World Cup. She has a really big job ahead of her, a big job now, but she's very, very qualified. She was director of sport for the 2012 London Olympics and Paralympics, the first woman appointed to the role. Previously, she ran her own sports consultancy company, and she started her career as a tennis player at the age of 16 and became a Wimbledon champion. In March, she was voted #1 in the Guardian's list of 50 most influential women in British sport. Maybe she can give us a few tips later on how women can participate more in sports in Japan and in the 2019 World Cup. So please give a warm welcome to Debbie Jevans. So we are going to have a brief video, and then she'll give a talk afterwards.
Rugby World Cup is a truly global event, with over 80 countries involved in qualifying and an international audience in the hundreds of millions. In 2015, the 20 best teams in the world are going to compete to win rugby's ultimate prize, the Webb Ellis Cup. Made from gilded silver in 1906, the Webb Ellis Cup is the most coveted object in rugby and will now travel across the world in the build-up to Rugby World Cup 2015, which will be hosted in England. With the support of Land Rover and DHL, the Webb Ellis Cup will travel to 15 countries between May 2014 and June 2015. DHL will get the trophy safely to each country, and Land Rover will take it to places it has never been before. In the build-up to the tournament, the International Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour will touch down at locations across the globe, including Japan, Australia, Fiji, Madagascar, Kenya, South Africa, Argentina, Uruguay, Hong Kong and China, the USA, the United Arab Emirates, Italy, Germany, Romania, and France. Celebrating the game's unique values and global culture, the iconic Webb Ellis Cup will visit rugby clubs and schools, young people and rugby fans, and potential new fans as part of the Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour, engaging, exciting, and inspiring people across the world to play and support the game. You can track the progress of the Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour from start to finish on rugbyworldcup.com/trophy tour. Here you'll be able to find out more about the countries it will be visiting and check out all of the action from each leg of the tour. You can also be part of the international celebration of rugby by uploading your favourite rugby photos directly to Facebook, or by including the hashtag #CelebratingRugby on a Twitter, Instagram or Vine post. Your photo will then automatically appear on our Facebook gallery, and the world will be able to see what the game means to you. Visit the official Rugby World Cup Facebook page for more details. The Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour is set to capture the imagination of people across the world in the build-up to next year's tournament, as we prepare to welcome rugby and the world to England in September 2015. For more details on the Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour and opportunities to see the Webb Ellis Cup when it returns for a tour of the UK and the Republic of Ireland, join the front row at rugbyworldcup.com/front row.
All right, thank you. That was great. Thank you so much. Just really quick, I'm very sorry I didn't introduce David Paul. I'm very sorry. He's Debbie's media manager. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, hello everybody. David's not just my media manager. I've never been that grand. David, actually, for the England Rugby 2015, but it's great to be here in Tokyo, and also the time I've been here, we've been with our friends from the from the International Rugby Board, and also the Japan 2019 Organising Committee, along with the Japanese Rugby Union. It's now less than 500 days to go to the Rugby World Cup in England, and we're all very excited about that, and it's also very exciting to be here in the build-up to 2019 as well. We're celebrating the start of our international trophy tour with 500 days to go. We launched it in England, in London, in City Hall with the Mayor, where we had some 300 guests, and we're going to be taking the trophy around the world over the next 500 days and 400 days. It'll arrive back in England with 100 days to go. An important fact for us is that tickets are already on sale throughout the world. They're on sale through the hospitality market and also the rugby travel packages that we have on offer. Next week, we have 500,000 tickets. They'll go on sale through the rugby community. Primarily, that will be the rugby clubs in England and in Wales. And this is important to us because it gives the opportunity to those that have supported rugby week in, week out throughout the years. It gives them an opportunity to buy those tickets first. After that, 1 million tickets will go on sale to the general public. This window is from the 12th of September to the 29th of September. And any matches that are sold out, then what we'll have is a ballot. And what is important, throughout the Rugby World Cup in 2015, we'll have about 2.3 million tickets overall, which will be the most ever tickets for a Rugby World Cup. And in addition to that, we anticipate that there'll be 4 billion television spectators for the event. What we'll do over the coming months through our website, which is Join the Front Row, we will distribute a lot of information about those tickets and how to purchase them. And importantly, I think, because of the wonderful internet that we have now, those tickets will be available worldwide. As you saw from the video earlier, that the vision very much for 2015 is to celebrate the great sport of rugby and everything that it offers. And we also want very much to welcome the world to England and to the sport of rugby. And that was the primary reason why we did launch the first ever Webb Ellis Rugby World Cup Trophy Tour. And that is important. And we took that learnings from what actually happened with the Olympic torch. And, you know, Lucy has said already that my involvement previously was with the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. And that was 9 years from the bid and then through the organising committee. And people often say to me, you know, what were some of the best moments from the Olympic Games? And in fact, for me, it was when the torch actually arrived in England from Athens, and I saw how the British public actually embraced it. And that was the moment that we knew that the Olympic and Paralympic Games were going to be a great success, that the great British public had embraced totally everything that was valuable about the Games. And therefore, to us, we want to do the same thing very much with Webb Ellis Trophy, hence taking it around the world to some emerging rugby markets, to some established rugby markets, building that interest in the game, and then very much welcoming it back to our shores with 100 days to go. To date, it's been to Yamanashi, it's been to Mount Fuji, Keio University, which is where the first rugby game was played in Japan. And then what was exciting for me was when we actually ended up at a sumo wrestling match. So that was good. So I was able to see some sumo wrestling, and we had the chance to have the trophy and take a photograph taken with a ball as well, with a sumo wrestler. And that is really important, I think, that we do actually promote the sport in Japan very much by using sports that are clearly established. The tour is delivered very much with our partners of DHL and Land Rover, and this is a huge exercise, and we're very grateful for their support, because we wouldn't be able to do what we've done without the support that they've given us in taking the trophy around the world. We'll also be spending from this afternoon some time with the organising committee for the 2019 Rugby World Cup, and also that same transfer of knowledge with the 2020 organising committee for the Olympic Games. And with me is my operations director, Neil Snowball, business manager, Chris Bryant, who is sitting over there. And that's really important. One thing that was incredibly valuable to me when I got the job with the Olympic Games, and also when I had the honour of being appointed chief executive of the 2015 Rugby World Cup, was the chance to share knowledge with those that had staged events previously. So we're building up a very close partnership with the organising committee, and I think that's absolutely right, and certainly we want to share the learnings that we've made and the lessons that we've learnt along the way. And it will, as I say, very much the trophy tour will showcase everything that we want to demonstrate about the Rugby World Cup. So we have now less than 500 days to go until 2015, and we'll launch on the 18th of September. Our organising committee is now 100 people. We have our 13 match venues confirmed. We have our cities confirmed, and we've also launched the match schedule. And it was a pleasure to see Japan qualifying yesterday for 2015. So they will begin in Brighton against South Africa, and then Japan will then also play in Kingsholm in Gloucestershire, and also Milton Keynes, where they have a tough group, but I'm sure they will have a really good chance of getting out of that and qualifying for the quarterfinals. We've also just about finalising where all the team bases will be for 2015. We have some 43 team bases throughout England for the World Cup, and that's where the teams arrive. They'll base themselves at a training venue, and then they travel around the country to these team bases. And part of our celebrating rugby is the interaction that the teams will have when there are team bases, and we also have fan zones in every single city where we do have an event. And that's important, because as much as the matches themselves, we want our event, as we've said, to very much celebrate rugby and embrace those that cannot actually get to a match themselves. And that's why for us the fan zones are really, really important, and it's our role to ensure that we do engage our nation and engage the world. And that's why such activations, city dressing, fan zones, working with local media, working with local companies is so important. Another vital aspect of any event delivery is the volunteers. For the Olympic Games, we had the Games Makers, which were some 80,000 volunteers that welcomed the world to London for the Olympic Games, and we will have some 6,000 volunteers for us in 2015. We've called our volunteers the pack. The pack in rugby is often what drives the team forward, and so we are just beginning our recruitment process for our 6,000 volunteers. We'll have tryout sessions throughout the country in all of our 13 venues, and 20,000 people have applied for those 6,000 spots. So that's really, really important to us. Equally, I think, as in line with, I spoke about the fact that we have 500,000 tickets going on sale to the rugby community to begin with, 75% of our volunteers will come from rugby clubs. Again, that's the chance to reward those that to support the game. Week in, week out, early in the morning, late in the evening, you have volunteers there that are supporting rugby, supporting sport. So we wanted to very much celebrate and embrace everyone that has supported the game. And so 75% of our volunteers are going to come from the rugby market. Our ticketing campaign, we've spoken about where tickets go on sale to the public, and we'll start rolling out that advertising campaign. That momentum will really begin in around about the middle of August this year. We'll then come out with all of the messaging that is behind that through the media and newspapers, and also our Rugby World Cup ambassadors, which in England we have Maggie Alfonsi, who is a famous women's rugby player in England, Lawrence Dallaglio, Johnny Wilkinson, and Will Greenwood, the latter three being World Cup winners in 2003. And they'll be working with us very hard on when we launch that campaign in the beginning of August. So as I say, we are in great shape. There are 100 people working very hard back in England. Those numbers will grow and will be around about 300, 320 full-time staff when we actually launch the World Cup in 2015. But it has so far been a great success on the first stage of our World Cup trophy tour, and Lisa is sitting over there as a manager of it. Is just about to embark on a world tour. We all want her air miles, but sadly I don't think we can have them, but has done a brilliant job with David, so thank you to Lisa and David. And I'm very happy to answer any questions, but as I say, it's a great pleasure to be here and be able to talk to you about the 2015 Rugby World Cup and our trophy tour. So thank you.
All right, Debbie, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor to questions. Working press gets priority. Any questions, please? This is your chance. We've got about 30 minutes. We've got until 12:30. I know you've got lots of questions. Yes, please, go ahead. Please come up to the mic and identify yourself and your media.
Very nice to see the World Cup here in the Press Club, and very nice to hear your speech. My name is Michael Galbraith. I'm a freelance writer. I am also the historian of the YCAC, which is Japan's oldest sports club. A co-founder of the YCAC in 1868 was Mr. George Hamilton. He was an alumni of Rugby School. He played rugby here for 20 years, and there are many, many records. There was one other guy from Rugby School playing here, 1870s. You just said that the first rugby was played in Keio University, which was in 1899. This gentleman's a Keio man. He's played at the YCAC. Keio University contributed greatly to the popularization of rugby in the early 20th century. They were not the first people to play rugby. They were not even the first Japanese people to play rugby. How do you feel? Are you aware of this? And my other question is, don't you think that, would you not agree with me that Mr. George Hamilton and his colleagues, and also the YCAC, deserve some credit in Japanese history books of rugby for introducing rugby to Japan? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you, sir. And I apologise if my history isn't as good as yours, clearly. But I think, of course, anybody deserves credit, as does the YCAC. No one would ever question that, or Mr. Hamilton. And I think the fact that rugby has been played here for so long is amazing, and also the fact we can celebrate that by bringing the Rugby World Cup here in 2019. That is very much the credit of people like him that started the game, because without that, then the World Cup wouldn't be here, the trophy tour wouldn't be here. And the history of rugby itself, and what the Webb Ellis Trophy, it's, as you know, is called the Webb Ellis Trophy through Webb Ellis picking the ball up at rugby school and running with it, hence the name rugby, and then the fact that it's played here. So without question, the YCAC and Mr. Hamilton does deserve credit, and I apologise for my lack of history knowledge. I shall certainly go back and look closer at the books when I get back to my hotel room. But the most important thing is, as I say, the fact that we are able to celebrate that history here in Tokyo and here in Japan, because the sport has been played here for so long. And for me, watching yesterday in the Olympic Stadium that will now be demolished in time for the 2019 Rugby World Cup, the first match has been played, just to see that the team is competitive now. And I think, you know, if he were here today looking down, I think he'd be very proud on everything he's done. So thank you for informing me of what I didn't know.
So the YCAC is the Yokohama Country Athletic Club, right? Yeah, so they've got a lot of great facilities there. It's quite famous.
Thank you.
Okay, more questions, please. Don't be shy. Okay, yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, and welcome to Japan. Thank you for offering us the opportunity to see the World Cup and listen to you. My name is Tristan. I work for Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee, and as you may have guessed, I'm French, so please excuse or enjoy my accent. You've said you learned great lessons in London 2012 and in the England 2015 from previous organizer. Can you be more specific about the main recommendation you would give to the 2019 organizing committee, and what are your top advices to them to throw a successful rugby party in 2019, please? Thank you.
I think people often ask about the lessons that were learned and, you know, the transfer of knowledge. There is a transfer of knowledge which is web-based on the internet, where there are, you know, documents that are passed forth. Everything from equipment lists to transportation schedules to the food that the athletes will want at the Olympic Village. And I think for me, you know, going forward into 2020, that the big lesson that I took away from the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games were the two huge things. One is to plan. You cannot plan enough, and don't underestimate the value of testing. We ran 42 test events for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. We did a test event for every single sport, and we also did the transfer from the Olympics to the Paralympic Games, and we tested Paralympic sport as well. And that was invaluable. It was invaluable not only in understanding more about the event delivery, where we made mistakes in our planning, because one thing looks fantastic on a piece of paper, you actually physically go and deliver the event and it completely changes. So the planning and the testing, you cannot overestimate the value of that. Secondly, I spoke about the torch, and when the torch arrived in England, the fact that the public got behind it and how we're learning with the trophy tour, and that's also embrace the nation. You absolutely need the nation behind you, the city behind you, the people behind you. So we worked very, very hard on communicating, and we started that in the case of, say, 2020 and 2019, we started that now. It's not something that can happen close to the event itself. You need to educate, to inform, to communicate both regionally and nationally. So that was so important that everybody in our country wanted to get behind and be a part of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And our ambition for 2015 is that England becomes a rugby nation, that people will embrace the sport, celebrate the sport, watch it through television, fan zones, or at the games, at the event themselves. And yeah, I've spoken about people, also hire great people. And ultimately, you know, it's the people are so important. It sounds sort of basic thing, but it's absolutely true. And we had an amazing team in 2012, and I'm incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic team in 2015. And so the people are so important, because ultimately people will deliver what you do. As I say, that you need the background, you need the spreadsheets, you need the planning, you need the milestones, you need the infrastructure, but you do very much need the people. And for us, I think both for those games, the interface and the government support that we have had, both regionally and nationally, was also vital. So those are the big lessons. Underneath that, since a lot of detail and a transfer of knowledge, but I think those are the four key headlines that I would say that are so important. And up front to get the structure right, but ultimately it's the people that will deliver it.
Well, that's very, very clear. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, more questions, please. Yes.
Martin Cross from Total Rugby. Debbie, rugby's overwhelmingly at its governance levels male-dominated. Women's rugby has grown enormously at a playing level, but not necessarily at governance level. And how difficult has that been to break through that ceiling in a way, and how does that compare with the Olympic experience that you had?
No, thank you. It's a fair question. I've been involved in sport for many years, and I think when I first started with the Olympic movement, it had the ambition of 20% of females being on the board of an international federation or a national Olympic committee. And that hasn't necessarily changed as quickly as I would probably like to see. But what has changed very quickly is the fact that in England, or in Great Britain, 50% of the athletes were female. So I think what is happening as women and girls are getting far more involved in sport. I came from a tennis player, and gradually I do think that will translate into more women being involved in administration and on boards. But certainly that evolution had to start first as an athlete, and we'll gradually see that more and more. So I think for myself, yes, I mean, rugby is to date very male-dominated. I think the fact that rugby is an Olympic sport with sevens, which is men and women, will make a big difference. But to be fair, I have this job, and you know, it's rugby that gave me the opportunity to be involved in sport. It was the RFU that you know, put me in this position. So in that sense, I think things are changing. 50% of my team in the Olympics was female. Two of my directors in 2015 are female, and a number of in England, the board is female as well. So I think it is changing slowly, which I think is right, because I actually think, you know, an all-female board isn't a great thing either, but to have both men and women on a board means you just get a complete overview of what is genuinely happening out there, and why wouldn't you want to have that diverse input and different points of view? So I think it's right, and I'm proud of the fact that I am sitting here, but I do think things are changing, and the fact that I am sitting here is testament to that.
Are there any particular suggestions you could make for Japan on attracting more women into sports? No.
No, I mean, I think it's just, I think the opportunity that there is, I mean, in rugby there is a female Japanese team. In the Olympic Games are going to be here, will be half women. I think if there's anything I can say that I could never and would never give advice to a country, nor should I, but certainly somebody told me something, that it was to always have the courage to speak up. Sometimes as a female, maybe you don't have the courage to speak up. So as you can see, I don't mind doing that now. But I think to have the courage to speak up is important, and just to be heard. But I just want to say that I've been incredibly welcomed here in Japan. It's been a fantastic opportunity for me, and I haven't felt any different being a female. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful welcome and a wonderful opportunity. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Japan for that.
I'm sure everybody's delighted to meet you. So special. Okay, any questions, please? More questions? No? Yes? Comments? Oh, yes, sorry. Go ahead.
G'day, Seth Rawson from Stars and Stripes. I've been reading a lot in the news about cricket match fixing and bookies getting involved in that sport. Obviously it hasn't been happening in rugby as far as I know, But is that something that's on your radar, and what are you guys putting in place to make sure that doesn't happen? Are you guys investing in some sort of or making greater investments, given what's been happening with cricket?
No, it's a good question, and the answer is yes. There is a commission that's in place underneath the International Rugby Board to look at that and look at some challenges that there have been. There's been a lot of interface with tennis. Tennis was actually one of the first sports to actually appoint somebody who was an ex-policeman to head up a committee to look into, in its case, match fixing and to look at trends. There are also relationships in place and information that comes from betting companies as well. But certainly it is very, very much on the radar, as it should be, because the integrity of sport is paramount. And for people to go and watch and support and play a sport, the fact that it does have integrity, that it isn't influenced by betting is, as I say, is paramount and is vital. So it's something that the sport takes very, very seriously, and there is an independent commission that's been set up that is looking into it as we speak.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else? No? Yes, please, go ahead, yeah.
Hi, my name is Shuhei. I'm very happy to see you again. So,
Yes, sure.
according to Guardian, so you ignore the gender stereotypes. So how do you destroy the wall, the gender of all? So
How do you
how do you
destroy gender
destroy
types?
the wall of the gender? It's Japan's very so women and men is so it's
Male dominated.
sorry. How did you break through the genders?
Maybe you know my English ability because we
Okay,
That's great. No, thank you so much for
Better
helping.
than my
Yeah,
Japanese.
forgive me for any inconvenience. This gentleman like to ask, as Guardian reported someday, you has broken the gender barrier. He sees there is still that kind of barrier exists in Japan. Do you have any recommendation how to break it and the way to break it?
Okay, I mean, no, thank you. As you know, as I said, Japan is a wonderful country, and I've had an amazing time here. And so it would be inappropriate for me to talk about Japanese culture or the country. I can talk about England, and I think it's something that has changed gradually in England, and a number of politicians have very much overtly encouraged companies to have females on the boards. And now, just before I left, the last FTSE 100 company appointed a female to the board. So now every country and every company in the top 100 companies in England has a female on the board. And I think that is a really important statement. So in England, what has happened is the government has been very vocal in this respect, and that has therefore encouraged companies, be they sport or otherwise, to appoint women. But in sport particularly, the fact that females are playing more and more, I genuinely believe will translate into having more females in administration and in governance in sport.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? More questions? Yes. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, please. So you were with the 2020 Olympic.
Exactly, the organizing committee.
The organizing committee. Oh, great.
Sorry, it's me again. I have plenty of questions. England is a great land of rugby. You have a very large fan base, fantastic stadium. So, with all due respect, it sounds like an easy job to host the World Cup there. But what have been your main challenges so far in planning to host the World Cup in England, what is probably one of the greatest land of rugby? Thank you.
I wish it was easy. I think it's the same when we approach the Olympic Games. We approach in looking at the event and what it takes to deliver the event. And in the case of the Olympics, it was 26 sports. The case of rugby, it's one sport, so people may say it's easy, but the actual complexity behind it is the same. You still have the transport, you still have accommodation. We have to book 83,000 hotel rooms is what we will require for the Rugby World Cup. You still have accreditation, you still have to fly the teams in, etc. So all it is, the complexity is very similar, but it's just a smaller scale. I think if you ever sit back and think it's easy, that's when you fail. That's when you forget something, you stop having your attention to detail. So I think for us, it's making sure that, one, the country is very much engaged in the Rugby World Cup. We have the support of the local authorities because we need a lot of planning permission, we need a lot of road closures. For the road event in 2012, we had 1,000 road closures. Now, for rugby, we don't need to have 1,000 road closures, but you still have, when you have 82,000 people arriving at Twickenham, they don't all keep to the pavement, and one of the main thoroughfares is a main artery, if you will, for the traffic. So we have to redirect the traffic and close that road for a period of time. So there's lots of complexities that are the same as the Olympic Games. It's just not on the same scale. Equally, I think one thing that we did well for the Olympics was that people came out and watched sport that they didn't know before. People came and watched taekwondo, they came and watched wrestling, for example. They just wanted to be a part of it and just to embrace it. And whereas you do have a rugby following for when England's playing at Twickenham, it may not be, quite the same for, say, when, let's say, Japan versus Samoa. So it's very important for us to publicise the sport and ensure that the Great British public gets out there to support the game and support all of the 20 teams taking part, not just England. So it's not easy. There's a lot to do. I'm very confident and comfortable where we're at, but I'm definitely not complacent.
I'd like to ask a question. So earlier you were saying you had to get the public behind rugby. I think that's a big challenge here in Japan because obviously football, soccer, and baseball really dominate, and a lot of people don't know about rugby. And I mentioned earlier I didn't even know Japan has a women's rugby team. So how can we get the public more behind rugby? How can we educate the public better?
And I think what we're doing here with the organising committee and the Japanese Rugby Union is the first step of that. To be fair to the organising committee here, they were the ones that encouraged us to come and start the trophy tour here. We had the qualifying match yesterday, and then it's the build-up between now and 2019. And the team doing well in 2015 will help that. And communicating through the media, we're going to start sharing the ideas and what we did in 2012 and what we've done with 2015 with the organising committee this afternoon. Going into the rugby clubs, getting the volunteers to be activated, using different sports. As I say, sumo wrestling was very, very important for us to do that. But one big thing will be the success of the teams, both in sevens, both women and men, and the team's doing well. And I was with Eddie Jones, who's the coach, who's the national coach earlier, and he is certainly absolutely passionate about, working for Japan to get out of the group in 2015. And if that happens, that will be a big step forward and to start getting the interest, because a successful team also does facilitate that. But everybody in this room getting behind it will be a good start.
And obviously the media is incredibly important to all of this. Are you going to be visiting other media while you're here? Any TV stations or anything like that?
I don't think. No, I'm not.
No,
Okay, I do what I'm told. No, so but I think that the coverage that we've had, we're really excited about, and no one's going to. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that rugby at this moment in time is as popular as baseball or is as popular as football. It isn't. Can it grow? Absolutely. Is the World Cup, which is the third biggest event in the world. One shouldn't forget that the three top events in the world are the Olympic Games, the Rugby World Cup, and the Football World Cup. Japan is hosting 2 of those in consecutive years. That is a fantastic opportunity for sport. So I would be amazed if the country didn't get behind it, didn't get behind the team, and didn't get behind the sport. But without question, of course, the media have a massive part to play in that, both the written press and on the internet and through broadcast.
All right. More questions, please. Any more comments? Mary, I see you came in just now. You have a question? She's with the YCAC. She's a longtime member. We were talking about the YCAC earlier and how rugby played there first place in Japan. Any questions? No? No, okay.
Hello. Hi. Mary Corbett from Kressner Communications. Do you have examples of other countries where you might have taken some action with media or public interest to sort of raise the awareness if you didn't think in the build-up? I mean, we still have a few years, but what is your media plan and public awareness plan for Japan?
Okay, I think, from a rugby perspective, that begins now internationally, and we are proud of the fact, and I say the inspiration was the Olympic torch, because this is the first time there's ever been an international trophy tour for the Rugby World Cup. So that is really important. That's something that we instigated. It's absolutely right in taking the trophy around 15 countries. So this is the first time it's happened. So this is an example of one thing that we're trying to do in 2015, and in those markets when we're there, we will engage with the media. We will talk about ticket sales, the fact that when they do go on sale, that is web-based, so everybody has that opportunity. And the venues and the cities that we've chosen are both established rugby markets and new rugby markets. And for the Olympics in 2012, we also did a lot of engagement with national Olympic committees where we travelled the world. Myself, Paul Dighton, Seb Coe went to countries to promote the Olympic Games as well. And I think what is really important is that, if you like, we have to get out there ourselves. We have to take the trophy. We have to take, the rugby balls around the world, and we will do that. And internally, what is important is, I say that the rugby is promoted through various platforms, not just a rugby match, but be it a chat show, be it a drama or something, that other platforms are used to promote the sport. And in the build-up in 2015 in England, which will really pick up around about, we anticipate 100 days to go, that's where, if you look back at 2012, you had the strapline Inspire a Generation that is now still used in England, in London. That was only launched with 100 days to go, yet everyone remembers it from the Olympic Games back home. So we will really start that national build-up at about 100 days to go, and we will take the trophy. We've got a few ideas for it under different platforms, but from what we're doing for 2015 and for 2019, I think the International Trophy Tour is the first part of that.
Sorry, just to add, I think 100 days might be a bit short for this platform because it's a very different platform to what you already have in place in the UK. So I think many of us were quite worried about the build-up. But anyway, thank you. You've answered a lot of questions, though. Thank you.
I mean, on that, I can see that, but I do think there will be a focus still at the very end. It tends to go like that. So for what we started the build-up very early in 2015. So please don't think I was saying do nothing until 100 days to go. I mean, this is 500 days to go with the trophy tour, but equally, you don't want to start too early.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
I think you're leaving tomorrow or the next day, so 5 days. At kids level, there are lots of schools, rugby schools in Japan, training kids. I just wonder, during these 5 days, have you taken this, are you planning to visit any schools, rugby schools?
Yes, we have. I wasn't personally there, but David, you want to just talk about...
Rugby school yesterday morning.
Okay.
So, yeah,
How old were the kids?
Well, the youngest 4, 5.
Okay, good.
The
All
older-
right.
I mean, I've seen the photographs,
they
which...
were- they was
Right.
nice.
But maybe it would be a great idea if you could, given what Mary's saying, if you come back again with this and take it to a few more schools and high schools, because these are the people who will be playing in 2019 here.
No,
Thank you.
No, without question. And I think certainly from once Japan is the host nation, there are 4 years when, if you will, it will have the right to use the trophy as much as it desires. The same way as what we have done in England, exactly that. We have taken it to schools. We're working with a lot of schools for welcome ceremonies for the teams. A lot of the schools have, as part of their geography lessons, learning about the nations that are going to be competing in the World Cup. So all of those local activations. And then the trophy, can be here for 4 years. So there is an opportunity, as much as us coming back, and I'm sure the Japanese, Rugby Football Union will be doing that, taking it into schools, taking it into junior rugby subs, and really using that build up and using the trophy.
Okay. More questions, please? Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Nao. I'm also from Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Organizing Committee. I think legacy is one of the most important things in hosting Olympic and Paralympic Games. So do you think how the society in UK has changed after the Olympic Games? And what sort of legacy would you like to leave after the 2015 World Cup?
I think I'm a true believer. In many ways, the word legacy, I think, is challenging because people think of legacy and they don't start planning and thinking about it until after the event has taken place. The only way that you will truly have a good legacy is if legacy is part of your planning. So now, like for 2020, to think of what the legacy is that you'd like to leave after the Olympic Games. For us, for the Olympic Games, that was very much part of our planning. So our venues, for example, were built with how we wanted them to be in legacy in what now is the Queen Elizabeth Park, where we have the Copper Box, the Aquatic Centre, the Athletic Stadium, and also the Tennis and Hockey Centre. The design of those was the design for how it was going to be in legacy, and then we overlaid the Olympics with temporary facilities. So, for example, the Aquatic Centre is a 2,500-seater stadium, and then for the Olympic Games we put 15,000 seats on as temporary wings, and then those have now come down. So I think legacy in any country is relevant to that country. We have the venues that are going to be in Queen Elizabeth Park. We also have investment in rail. We have the development of open spaces that were absolutely right for London. The east of London hadn't had any investment for 50 years, and the impetus of the Olympic and the Paralympic Games meant that whole area is redeveloped, and it's now a green park the size of Hyde Park in West London, which is fantastic for the population. There is a new shopping centre. There was a lot of inward investment. So we had our legacy as part of our reason for bidding, and also part of our planning when we planned our infrastructure. From a 2015 perspective, the ambition is to get more people playing rugby, get more youngsters into the game, and in that regard there is development programs. A big one of those being with schools. It's called an all schools program that is being led by the Rugby Football Union in England, and that is putting rugby posts, rugby equipment and coaches into schools. And they want rugby to be played in every school in England by the time of the end of the Rugby World Cup. There's also a programme called Posts in Park, which is putting rugby posts up in parks. So primarily for 2015, which is one sport, the ambition is very much to getting more people playing more rugby more often, but it was a much bigger ambition for the Olympic Games, which involved a lot of infrastructure and inward investment.
Thank you.
Good question. Wow, I hadn't thought about legacy. It's really important. Okay, any more questions? Any more? Do you want to share a little bit about your own personal story about I mentioned earlier about as an athlete yourself, what has been some of the most challenging things you've encountered?
No, I mean, I think, I've been very lucky. I've been involved in sports since I was very, very young. My parents actually met on a tennis court, so I guess my sort of career was laid out at that point. So I was very lucky. I played tennis for a number of years and had a degree of success, and then I went and lived in the Middle East, and for me that was a very, very big learning, was actually being exposed to a different culture, and the Middle East in the 80s was very different to what it is now. So that taught me a huge amount. And then I came back and started my career in tennis. So it has been interesting. Being an athlete taught me a lot, and that is probably about the way that I manage, actually, because if you are an athlete, you cannot go onto a court or a rugby field of play or a running track having not prepared to the best of your ability, because if you do, you'll fail. It's as simple as that. You can never wing it as an athlete. You have to go out there and you have to be prepared and know that you've done your best. And I've carried that through with me, I think, into how I approach business. It's very much with that athlete mentality, and to come second isn't good enough. And so that's something I think I've taken through with me. I've also learned that some things that as a tennis player weren't good. So, for example, when you actually only think of yourself and you worry about what's right for you, what's right for your training, and not necessarily understanding the impact on others. And that's one thing I had to learn very quickly, that I had to consider the impact of what I did or what I said on others, which is what you have to do in a team. So that was one thing that I probably learned that I didn't do so well when I started my career. But I've been very lucky. I was, to be asked to be a part of the bid when we bid for the Olympic Games, and I was one of the 12 people that stood up there on the stage in Singapore and presented. Probably the most nervous I've ever been, actually, thinking about that. And we were successful, and then was fortunate enough to be offered this job. But as in anything, you only succeed if you surround yourself with good people, and I'm very, very lucky in that respect. So I think just genuinely I've been quite lucky, really.
Very disciplined, I can imagine. Okay, any more questions? Anybody else? Final? Okay, yes, go ahead. I think this is the final question.
Well, thank you for coming here today. And my name is Yuko Nezawa of Yomiuri Shimbun. And I would like to know about what is the attractive points of rugby. You have mentioned that you have played tennis for a long time, and you have dealt with many other sports, and now you are working on rugby. Which part you like rugby, and if there is any points you don't like about rugby, they're asking about that.
Having just been with the national coach, I don't think I'll talk about pointers for any rugby team. I think from rugby there are two aspects. If I actually begin with outside of the field of play, I first went to watch rugby. My father played rugby, so I've been going to rugby since I was very young, and I actually first worked in rugby in 2003, so I have been involved in the game. But the one thing that strikes me is the camaraderie and the friendships that there are from anybody involved in rugby. The friendships that they have are very deep and very meaningful. And also I think the respect that there is. That's one thing that many other sports can learn from, I think. The respect and the discipline. If the referee says that it's a foul, then all the players respect that. And I think that is a very important point. And then on the field of play, you can see the fitness and the skill, both in sevens and in 15s, certainly from sevens, which is now an Olympic sport, and 15s, which is the the Rugby World Cup in 2015, and the skill and the fitness of the players is second to none. I went to Pennyhill Park, which is where the England team trains, and I saw them working out, and that discipline that they have and their fitness is exceptional. And if you think about the sport, you have the running, you have the hand-eye coordination from the catching, you have the kicking, so it embraces many different skill sets that other sports don't necessarily do. So, but in many ways, I think it is worth focusing on the respect and the discipline and what happens off the field of play, and the way that rugby players conduct themselves, and that they are all, without question, wonderful ambassadors to the game, and that's something that the sport should be very proud of.
Thank you. Should I ask about the safety factor of rugby? Yeah, I think maybe that's might be one of the concerns of parents for kids playing rugby.
No, I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I think, the question was about the safety of rugby, and the players are taught very young about sort of tackling and combat, etc. And statistically, there are many dangerous sports. I was actually watching on the television when I couldn't sleep, people jumping off caves and diving into water. I think that's pretty dangerous. Or there are many that I could say. I don't want to list them, but rugby itself is very disciplined, and the injuries are few and far between. There is a fantastic care around them. Their training, their coaching is appropriate. So for me, it's a sport that has actually learned. And young kids can start with touch rugby, and the contact starts a lot later. And if you look at the number of the parents that there are watching and supporting rugby, I think it's a sport that is fantastic to be involved in. That's certainly not something that has ever scared me.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. I think that's it for today. It is our great pleasure to give you a one-year honorary membership. I hope you are going to.
I've got to come back.
You've got to come back. Absolutely.
Okay,
so thank you
very
so
much
much for today. We really appreciate
Thank you,
your
everyone.
time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.